The photograph shows a man who has been dead for 3 hours, standing in a room with no light source, waving at the camera. I need you to understand, this isn't trick photography. This isn't infrared or night vision, or any technology you're thinking of. This is a standard photographic print, developed from standard film, showing detail that shouldn't exist because the room was sealed and completely, absolutely dark. File 71T optical is thin, surprisingly thin for something that terrified an entire research bureau. 23 pages, most of them test results and exposure logs, but attached to the back cover with degraded tape is a manila envelope containing 6 photographs that were supposed to have been destroyed in 1979. They weren't. And now I'm looking at them and my hands won't stop shaking because the last photograph, the one taken after they sealed the laboratory and cut the power and posted guards, shows someone still inside, standing in perfect darkness, holding a sign. The sign reads, "I can see you too." Here's what the official record says. In 1976, the KGB's Directorate T, Technical Intelligence, the people who built spy cameras into coat buttons and microphones into typewriters, received a proposal from a researcher named Dmitry Fedorov. He'd been working on low-light photography for surveillance purposes when he stumbled onto something he couldn't explain. He'd developed a film emulsion using a modified silver halide compound. The chemistry is redacted, but the margins have handwritten notes suggesting he was experimenting with trace amounts of phosphorus and something else. Something that made the review board uncomfortable enough to cross it out in multiple places with heavy black ink. The film could capture images in near total darkness, not amplify available light like standard low-light film. Actually capture in the absence of light. His initial tests were promising. A camera loaded with his experimental film, placed in a windowless room with the door sealed, produced images of the room's contents. Blurry, grainy, but recognizable. He submitted his results with a request for funding to continue development. The proposal was approved within 48 hours. That should have been a warning sign. When the KGB approves funding in 2 days for an experimental photography project, someone at the top has already imagined exactly how they'll use it. Someone has already made a list of dark rooms they want to see inside. They gave Fedorov a laboratory in the basement of a research facility outside Leningrad. Concrete walls, no windows, proper darkroom equipment, and a security clearance that prevented him from discussing his work with anyone outside the project. He called the camera Pero M. Feather M. Light as a feather, he said. Silent, unobtrusive. The development logs start in March 1976. Fedorov worked alone initially, refining the emulsion chemistry, testing different exposure times, different development processes. The early results were encouraging. Images captured in rooms with light levels below 0.1 lux, far beyond the capability of any existing technology. By June, he could photograph the interior of a sealed safe in complete darkness and identify the documents inside. The KGB was very interested, but Fedorov was starting to notice anomalies. His lab notes from June 14, 1976. Exposure test 34. Camera sealed in light-tight container for 8 hours. Developed film shows interior of container as expected, but image contains shadow. Distinct shadow cast across bottom of frame. No light source present to create shadow. Possible artifact from development process. Will repeat test. He repeated the test. The shadow appeared again. Same position, same angle, as if something outside the container was somehow casting a shadow into it. June 22nd. Exposure test 41. Photographed sealed room, total darkness, 12-hour exposure. Developed film shows room contents clearly. Also shows what appears to be movement blur in corner of frame. Consulted with optical physics colleague. Outside project showed no classified material. He suggests emulsion may be time-sensitive, accumulating image data over exposure period, creating blur from any movement. But room was sealed, nothing inside to move. July 3rd. Requested permission to bring assistant onto project, denied. Told project must remain single researcher for security purposes. Feeling isolated. Lab has no windows. Spend 12-14 hours per day in darkness testing film. Beginning to affect sleep. See after images when eyes closed. Sometimes see after images of things that weren't there. The tone of the notes changes around mid-July. The handwriting gets smaller, tighter, more cramped on the page. Fedorov started running tests continuously. 16, 18-hour days in the sealed laboratory, exposing film in total darkness, developing it, analyzing the results. July 14th, exposure test 67. Photographed own workspace, 6-hour exposure, complete darkness. Developed film shows desk, equipment, and myself sitting in chair. I was not in the room during exposure. I sealed the camera, left the laboratory, worked in administrative office for full 6 hours. Guards confirmed I did not return. But photograph shows me sitting at my desk. Face turned toward camera. Expression difficult to describe. Not quite my expression. Similar but wrong somehow. Eyes too wide. Will repeat test with multiple witnesses to confirm my absence from room. July 20th. Test 68 confirmed. 3 witnesses, including security chief, confirmed I remained in observation room for entire 8-hour exposure period. Camera sealed in laboratory, completely dark. Developed film shows me in laboratory, standing this time. Closer to camera. Same wrong expression. Hands at sides, but fingers positioned strangely. Counted digits in photograph. Left hand shows 6 fingers. I have 5 fingers. Consulted medical staff, showed photograph. They suggested stress, long hours in darkness affecting perception. Recommended 1-week rest. I declined. Too close to breakthrough. The next entry is dated July 23rd, but the handwriting has deteriorated. It's barely legible, letters overlapping. Test 71. I understand now. The film doesn't capture absence of light. It captures what's in the absence of light. The things that exist in darkness. The things we can't see because we emit light, we carry light, we are light. But they're always there. The emulsion is a window. I've been photographing through it. Into the dark. The real dark. Not the absence of light, but the presence of something else. And now it's photographing back. Attached to this entry is a photograph. The image shows Fedorov's laboratory, the distinctive concrete walls, the metal shelving, the workbench. The perspective is from inside the sealed camera, looking out into the room. The room is perfectly detailed despite being in total darkness. Standing in front of the camera is a figure, humanoid, tall. The proportions are wrong. Arms too long, hanging past the knees. Head tilted at an angle that suggests the neck is either broken or jointed differently than human anatomy allows. The face is turned toward the camera. The face is Fedorov's face. Exactly his face, recognizable from his personnel photo. But the expression, the report describes it as inconsistent with human muscular capability. The mouth is smiling too wide. The eyes are open too far. Behind the figure, in the background, there are more figures, blurred, indistinct. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all standing perfectly still in the darkness of the laboratory, all facing the camera. After the July 23rd entry, Fedorov stopped writing in his official log, but the file contains a letter he wrote to his wife, never sent, found in his desk after the incident. Galina, I don't know if I'll mail this. I don't know if I should worry you. But if something happens, you should know what I've discovered. The film works. It works better than I imagined, but it doesn't work the way I thought. When you turn off all the lights and seal a room in perfect darkness, you assume the room is empty. Just objects sitting in blackness, waiting for light to make them visible again. But that's not what the film shows. The film shows that darkness is crowded. There are things in the dark. Not entering the dark, not hiding in shadows, they're native to it. They live in the spaces between light. When we illuminate a room, we push them out, compress them into corners and cracks. But when we remove the light, they expand back. They fill the space, they reclaim it. I've photographed them hundreds of times now. At first, I thought they were artifacts, distortions, flaws in the emulsion. But they're consistent. They appear in the same positions. They move between exposures. They're real. And Galina, they've noticed the camera, they've noticed me. The last 3 nights I've woken up in complete darkness. You know, I always leave the hall light on. I can't sleep in total dark. But the light has been off, not burned out, switched off. And I can feel them in the room with me, standing around the bed, watching. When I turn on the light, there's nothing there, but I can smell them, like old paper and copper and something else I don't have words for. I'm going to run one final test. I need to know what they want, why they're appearing in the photographs, why they look like me. I'll be careful, I promise. Tell Anya I love her. Dmitri. The letter is dated July 27th, 1976. On July 28th, Fedorov didn't report for work. The security guard checked the laboratory at Nonenhausier and found it sealed from the inside. The door locked, no response to knocking. They breached the door at 10:30. The laboratory was in complete darkness. The lights were off. The emergency lighting had been disabled. The guard's flashlight cut through absolute blackness and found Fedorov was sitting at his workbench, upright, eyes open, not breathing. The medical examiner's report tries very hard to be clinical. Subject deceased approximately 3-4 hours prior to discovery. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. However, subject exhibits unusual presentation. Extreme pupil dilation bilaterally. Corneal opacity suggesting prolonged exposure to darkness. Rigor mortis absent despite time since death. Body temperature elevated, 39.2, inconsistent with deceased state. Most notably, subject's eyes contain residual image on retinal tissue. Ophthalmological analysis suggests subject's final visual input was extremely bright, despite laboratory being confirmed dark at time of death. Retinal burns consistent with direct exposure to intense light source at close range. No light source found in laboratory. They sealed the laboratory immediately. Everything inside was classified evidence. The camera, the unused film stock, Fedorov's notes, his experimental chemicals, and the final test. The camera was still on the workbench, positioned on its tripod, aimed at the chair where Fedorov's body had been sitting. The film counter showed a completed exposure. 12 hours, started at 21 or the previous night, ending at 09 that morning. The project supervisor, a KGB colonel named Petrov, made the decision to develop the film. Against the recommendations of, well, everyone. The security chief wanted it destroyed, undeveloped. The medical team wanted it quarantined. The technical staff refused to touch it. Petrov developed it himself. The development log describes his process in meticulous detail, the kind of detail a man writes when he's trying very hard not to think about what he's seeing emerge in the chemical bath. The photograph showed the laboratory in complete darkness, rendered in perfect detail by Fedorov's impossible film. It showed Fedorov sitting in the chair, alive, staring directly at the camera. The timestamp would have been approximately 03 Hanwogs, 3 hours after he started the exposure, 6 hours before he was found dead. But he wasn't alone. The laboratory was full. Dozens of figures standing in the darkness surrounding the chair. All shapes and configurations, some roughly humanoid, others less so. The photograph captured them in perfect clarity. Things that existed in darkness revealed by film that could see what light could not. They were all facing Fedorov, and Fedorov was changing. The photograph showed him mid-transformation. His face was still recognizable, but the proportions were shifting. The eyes were widening, the mouth was stretching, the arms were lengthening, hands reaching down past the seat of the chair. He was becoming one of them. The photograph was classified above top secret and locked in a safe. Colonel Petrov wrote a brief report recommending immediate termination of the Pero-M project and destruction of all materials. The report was approved within hours. They burned the laboratory. Not metaphorically, they actually set fire to it, incinerated everything inside, then filled the basement level with concrete. The official story was an electrical fire. The unofficial story was locked in files that were locked in safes that were locked in buildings that officially didn't exist. But they couldn't destroy all of it. Someone, the file doesn't say who, kept 6 photographs. Test shots from early in the project, before things went wrong. Or maybe they kept them because things had already gone wrong and someone needed evidence. 5 of the photographs are relatively mundane. Laboratory equipment in darkness, an empty room, a chair, objects rendered in grainy detail by film that shouldn't work. But in each photograph, if you look carefully, and I've looked very carefully, I've spent an hour staring at these images. There are figures in the background, indistinct, easy to dismiss as artifacts or shadows. But once you see them, you can't unsee them. They're always watching the camera. The 6th photograph is different. It's labeled Test 82 Final Exposure in handwriting that isn't Fedorov's. The date is stamped August 3rd, 1976, 6 days after Fedorov's death, 5 days after they sealed the laboratory. The photograph shows the sealed laboratory. The door is visible in the frame, the heavy fire door with "No Entry" stenciled in Russian. The lights are off. The room is empty, officially empty, cleared of evidence, locked and guarded. But the photograph shows someone inside. A figure standing in the center of the empty room, facing the camera. Tall, wrong proportions. Arms too long, it's holding a sign. White cardboard or paper, with text written in careful Cyrillic letters, "Я тоже вижу вас." I can see you too. The figure's face is turned toward the camera, and even in the grainy photograph, even through the distortion of the impossible film, I can see the expression. It's smiling. Not a human smile. The smile of something that learned how to smile by watching humans, but never quite understood why humans smile, only that showing teeth is important. There's a note paper-clipped to the photograph, handwritten on official KGB stationery. camera positioned outside sealed laboratory on August 3rd, 1976, 14 hours. Exposure time, 30 minutes. Laboratory confirmed empty prior to exposure. Laboratory confirmed empty after exposure. Film developed under standard conditions. Image analyst reports figure and photograph matches description of entities observed in Fedorov's final tests. Figure appears to be standing inside sealed room. Photographed through locked door and concrete wall. This should not be possible. Recommend permanent closure of investigation. Recommend destruction of this photograph. Recommendation overruled. Photograph retained as evidence of DAI, text heavily redacted. Further testing suspended indefinitely. Personnel involved in project reassigned. 3 have requested psychiatric evaluation. 2 have resigned. 1 missing, last seen entering darkened storage facility, never emerged. I put the photographs back in the envelope. The laboratory's location is listed in the file. The building still exists. I checked. It's been converted to civilian use. Offices for a telecommunications company. But the basement level where Fedorov worked, that's still sealed. Filled with concrete in 1976, never excavated. The file contains a maintenance report from 1983. The building superintendent complained about strange noises from the sealed basement. Tapping sounds. Rhythmic. Always starting at 21, sir. Running for exactly 12 hours. The investigation concluded it was settling concrete. Thermal expansion. Nothing unusual. The reports continued every few years. Different superintendents, same complaint. Tapping from the sealed basement. 12 hours. Always starting at night. The most recent report is from 2019. The building's night security guard quit abruptly. Claimed he could hear voices in the basement. Not through the floor. In the basement, the sealed, concrete-filled basement where nothing had existed for 43 years. He said the voices were calling someone's name. They were calling Dmitri. I closed the file. My office has fluorescent lights. Harsh, bright, institutional. I never turn them off, even when I leave. I pay the electricity bill personally to make sure they stay on. Because 3 days ago, I started developing these photographs for the first time. I wanted proper scans for the archive, high resolution, properly documented. And that night, I woke up in total darkness. The lights in my apartment were off. All of them. Not the breaker. I checked. Every individual switch had been turned off. And I could smell something in the dark. Paper and copper and something else. I turned on the lights. Nothing there. But this morning, I found a photograph on my desk. Not one from the file, a new one. Instant film, the kind from a Polaroid camera I don't own. The photograph shows my office. This office. Taken from the corner, near the ceiling, looking down, I'm in the photograph. Sitting at my desk, reading File 71 T Optical. But I'm not alone. There's a figure standing behind me. Tall, wrong proportions. Arms hanging too long. Its face is pressed close to my shoulder, looking at the file with me. And in this photograph I'm holding right now, that I found on my desk this morning. My face is starting to change. The eyes are too wide. File 71T Optical is closed. The Paro-M project was terminated in 1976. But Fedorov was right about one thing. The film doesn't capture darkness. It captures what lives in darkness. And when you look into the dark long enough, the dark learns your face. I'm Ian Cartwell, and I keep all my lights on now. Every light in my apartment, my office, the hallways I walk through, because I've seen what waits in the spaces between light. And I know they're still taking photographs, And the next one will show me completely transformed, standing in a dark room, holding a sign, waiting for someone else to look. The Paro M camera was destroyed, but the film remembers everything it saw, and what it saw is still watching.